Hey everybody, this is Noel Pulanco and
Mike Stout.
welcome back to the Big Guys Biz Show. I've got an old school friend of mine that I actually went to high school with back in, can we say the years, Tom? Mid 90s.
Yeah.
So my fellow Apollo Hawk, my fellow Apollo Hawk, Tom Sutliffe with Paradise Pavers and Landscaping. Hello, Tom. Thank you for joining us today.
Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
So Mike and I are both, I obviously do property management, real estate. Mike does lots of background checking and cool kinds of ID verification stuff. But we're both always around the real estate sphere. And you on the side of that are also dealing with houses. Tell me, what are you guys doing at Paradise Pavers and how did you get into this?
So I've been doing this about 5 years in Paradise Pavers and Landscaping. I actually kind of went a different route about it. I was in automotive back when I knew you back in the day. So I was working at Sears Auto Center back then. And I worked automotive for about 15 or 18 years, 20 years, something like that. And then I started coaching football, and I got a little bug for that. Coached my little kids from when they were 6 till all the way through high school. So I was coaching them, and then part of that was trying to find a schedule that automotive didn't allow that allowed me to be able to be off in time to do that stuff. So I did a couple different jobs, and then a buddy of mine who actually coached with me had a turf company, and so I went and worked for him for the last 6 years, and then I about a year into it, we branched off and had a little partnership going, and then when I left him, I did my own thing. So
nice.
That's where.
So this is your company, you own it?
I do. Yep, this is my country. I'm a company. I'm licensed, bonded, and insured, which in my industry is kind of rare, to be honest with you. I think most of my bids that I'm doing are 90% of them are not licensed, not ROC, none of that stuff. So that's a little different.
Yeah. So as a property manager, we have to use people by law that are licensed, and we'd be crazy not to use people that aren't insured and have workman's comp and all that. So we need to get you with Jason so we can get you on our vendor list. Because, we don't have a ton of landlords doing backyard remodels, but we do occasionally. So we've done 3 or 4 jobs in the last few years, and I want all of this to be yours.
Awesome. I would love for that.
So you went from working at Sears, and then were you in a sales role when you first started learning how to do this?
Yes. And then I was also running a warehouse. So he had 2 different companies, my buddy of ours, and then we started branching off and we started doing sales into the pavers and all that stuff. And I'm still in a sales role. I have crews that have been doing it. One of my crews has been doing it for 25 years. Another crew's been doing it about 19 years. Wow. So just depending on which end we go. 25 years is actually the turf guy, which you wouldn't think, because a lot of people say, man, I didn't even know turf was around for 25 years, but it has been, and it's just been improving every year since. Been doing it for about 25 years, and 19 years of full landscaping. So if you need paver, I do a lot of pavers, travertine, and drip systems and new builds. A lot of new builds. We do a lot of new builds. So any of your clients that are like buying a new house just to rent them, those we do a lot of those.
That's usually the ones we need it, because an investor, when they get a house, they want to spend as little as possible. And I'm like, hey, you got a 4-bedroom house. It can't have dirt in the back. We got to do something.
Yeah, right.
And I always like to coach what I call bulletproof houses, and putting pavers and turf in. I mean, the turf is good for 10, 15 years or so?
Yeah, all of our turf has a 15-year warranty on the material itself. I'll be honest, I've only been in this 6 years, but my partner who was doing it, my old partner who was doing it for 14 years, we never had any grass issues with the grass itself. It lasts for a long time, as long as you don't get it melted or something like that. When you put it too close to a window, then it'll melt. But other than that, you're pretty safe. It is pretty bulletproof stuff. So
is that because the window reflects on it?
Yeah, those low E windows, they put that layer of reflective right in between the 2 panes, and then it magnifies it coming back out, and it'll burn it in a matter of a couple hours. So you got to put some sunscreens over there, which isn't terrible, because sunscreens are obviously help you with your efficiency in your house, and they're not super expensive. So
So how close is too close?
I would say probably 4 to 6 feet away from it. So you wouldn't want to put anything 4 or 6 feet in a like a square around the window. So
good to know.
You just want to Oh, you want to avoid that direct sunlight hitting the window and then reflecting off and, working like when you were a kid and you used to melt, or try to catch your hands on fire or whatever we used to
I don't know
do.
what you're talking about. I would never do something like that.
I was thinking more Noel. You and I are probably a lot younger, but
Man, I don't like bugs, but I did learn how to torch scorpions when I first started getting scorpions. So maybe I'm reliving that I didn't get to do as a kid. But going back to that, that's great to know because, people that are just hiring somebody, all of these kind of industries, and I've been seeing it through 17 years of doing this. There's a lot of companies that can do halfway decent work. And there's a lot of guys that do the job for the summer and never do it again. I always tell people, like, especially my landlords, they're like, is the guy that you're going to use, have you used him before? And I'm like, I have, but there's always a first time we've used somebody. And that's why we make sure they're licensed, bonded, insured, and we check their experience because you hire that dude off of Craigslist that comes in and throws, turf right underneath your window. And 2 months later in July, it's fried, right?
Yep, that's exactly right.
And then I've seen a bunch of different kinds of installs, and you can tell when it's good. Now I have AstroTurf at my house. Do they even call it AstroTurf anymore? I have fake grass. What's the right term?
Yeah.
What's the right term?
Either synthetic grass or artificial turf. Synthetic grass or artificial turf. Either of those work. Yep.
Synthetic makes sense. I'll try to stick with that. So I have synthetic grass at my house, and I had it at my last house too, and I just freaking love it, man. So I did just a few palm trees around our new pool, and synthetic grass and pavers. So literally nothing in my yard makes a mess, except for the dogs. And when they do, it's easy. I was just spraying it off today using a little bit of the what do they call it? The stuff that it kind of melts away their urine and poo and stuff.
Yeah. They have several different manufacturers, but enzyme killers is usually what's in there. So it gets rid of that urine
enzyme. Thank you. Enzyme. See, my brain only works so good in the morning, but I use that enzyme stuff. It's got a little bit of smell, but it's easy. I do that every couple of months and hose it off, and it's a piece of cake, and I love it. And it always looks good, and you don't have to touch it. So that's what I love, especially on rental houses or vacation homes or lock and leaves. Just growing up in Arizona, I think all of us mostly did. It's almost impossible to grow nice grass. It's hard and it's expensive, and half the year it looks like crap. This stuff looks good all year, so I just love it.
And it's hot to maintain it. So when you're out there mowing it, when you're done with your work or you're in the morning or whatever, mowing it, it becomes a pain in the rear. So I agree.
I remember in between our last house and this house, we stayed in one of our clients' rentals for 2 months, and he had real grass in the back, and half of it was just dust and dirt. And I was like, I finally have a use for this stupid COVID mask. I would put that on when I would mow the yard just to keep the dust off of me. But I've never had that problem with this stuff. So what are you seeing? Like, is there trend or technology wise? Like, is the grass changing? I mean, I can already tell the stuff that I put in is way better than the stuff I put in my old house 10 years ago. Is it constantly changing, or have they found a pretty good?
No, it is changing. And what the newest trend, because at first for the last maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I'd say they're really focusing on getting more realistic looking. And now they've got that dialed in. I mean, it looks real good. There's in a grass, like I'm looking at a sample here on my seat next to me, but in the grass here, there's 2 different colors of blades that go up, and there's thatch, and the thatch is like the dead grass. So this is a sample of the grass, and the thatch here, I'll try to see if I can get in there, but you can see that little tan parts in there.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see it, but that's a tan in the ground, and that's actually just made to look like dead grass. It's inside there. So they've made it really realistic in that. And now what they're tending to do is, a lot of the complaints, especially in Arizona, that we have to overcome is the heat. So now they come when they're shaping the blades different sizes. They're putting little cuts in there and stuff. This particular sample that I have here, which I use in probably 95% of my grasses, it has what they call cool flow technology. So it makes it 10 to 15% cooler than the traditional, or from grass like your grass would have been, from some of the older grass. So it makes it cooler a little bit, because you hear a lot of complaints about that, or a lot of objection on that. Is it going to get real hot? It is. It's plastic. There's no way to fix that. If you're going to be out there and you're going to want to play in 115 degrees, first off, you should probably get your head checked first. Yeah. But if not, you should close it off a little bit, and your feet will be fine. So my dogs lay in it in the middle of the day. They'll be laying on top of it. Yeah. So it doesn't get super hot for them, but it does feel a little warm on your feet when you're walking in it or whatever. But That's what they're really striving for now, is just trying to find ways of cooling it down to make it cooler.
Have they helped to, I would walk around our neighborhood. We don't have it. We've been talking about getting it. So we might need to talk. But
yeah,
I always noticed the smell. It would always be when it got really, really warm. I mean, it's plastic, I assume. So is that something that's just going to be there? It's just part of it? Or is that maybe older stuff I'm smelling?
So generally what happens, and actually Noel hit on it a little bit here, usually the only thing you smell is when an animal's used it.
Yeah.
So there's 99% of turf is pet friendly turf. And then they have actual pet turf, which I actually also have another. I don't know how good these are showing up on your video here, but I have a pet turf here, right, as well. And on the back there, you can see there's a ton of little holes. See all those little holes for the drainage? On the pet turf itself, it has all those drainage holes. On the pet-friendly turf, it also has drainage holes, but they're much less. So it doesn't drain as well for the urine. And then the big part of it that you smell is the industry standard. The least expensive way to do it is to put silica sand on top of grass.
Maybe that's what it is.
And what that does is two things. It keeps the grass blades up, and it keeps the grass down. So it keeps the actual roll of turf down because it's just nailed around the edges, and it keeps the blade standing up. That's the industry standard. But when you're doing it with a pet, or if you have a bunch of kids on there, we use a product called Camofill, which has that enzyme killer in there, and it won't coat that silica. It's coated silica sand, so it's coated, so it won't allow the urine to impregnate it, and then you always smell the urine smell in there. So when we have pets or kids, and we do it with kids too, because the bag is of silica sand on the back, it says cancerous and all kinds of cancer warnings. So anytime there's kids that we know are going to be running around and kicking up that little bit of dirt, then we'll try to put that Camofill on there for them too. And that's just it's not your bulk of your expense is actually the grass and the install. So the install is relatively, it's not very much more expensive, but it's worth it for the peace of mind knowing that you're not, going to have a backyard that's going to stink like urine, or have your grandkids or kids or whatever breathing that dust that comes up when you're running around on it.
Well, and on the cost of it, both times I did it, I mean, it's not cheap unless you look at, how long it's going to last, right? So the first time I did it was right after sale. A guy called me and he had he's trying to get a couple of jobs done right before the holidays. And he said, I got some closeout stuff. I said, great, show me what you got. And I picked the, one similar to what you're talking about that had the different colors in it and stuff. And then this time I wasn't as concerned about the cost because I knew, because I'd had it before, how great it was going to be. So we just budgeted for it. It was like, let's do it. And we cut kind of as much as we could fit around our pool and our pavers and our design. But I just knew, it stings a little up front, but it lasts forever, man. I mean, it's the coolest thing that I like in backyards right now is when I see it. And I'm recommending it to our property owners all the time.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And the other thing you have to figure in cost too, because you definitely can get cheaper with just rolling out sod or something like that. Then you got to put a sprinkler system underneath that sod. Yeah. So depending on how big it is, you might be cheaper putting artificial grass than you would be putting a small patch of sod or something back there. Because you put 2,500 or 3,000 into trenching and putting a sprinkler system into there, and that will eat up a lot of that cost of the turf itself. So.
For sure. So let me change the subject a little bit to pavers. So I have 3 dogs. One of them's a little dog, so he likes to mark all the time. So literally just this morning, I was doing my enzyme stuff, and we got my wife didn't want travertine because it was a little more, so we got these big block pavers, and it looks great. It's a nice design, but I keep seeing these commercials about getting them sealed. Tell me a little bit of maybe just the technology side of brick pavers versus travertine. What's more sturdy? What do you like? What are your favorite kind of things to put in?
So we do a ton of actual pavers, and that's just because what you just said there is going to be cost. The other part with travertine is there's a ton of it. There's so many different manufacturers, and it's so different. Usually I can go in there with my pavers and I can say, pick one of these 4 colors. They're all exactly the same price. When you want to do travertine, I'm like, okay, well, what color scale do you want to go with? You want tans? You want grays? What colors do you want? And then it comes with, well, these ones are, X dollars, $6 a square foot for the material, or this ones are $73 a square foot. I can't really tell the difference between, but there's a difference. So pavers are a lot less expensive usually. So pavers are really great. As far as sealing goes, I think they've made some. I haven't seen a seal that's lasted more than a couple of years in in my time, but I think that they're getting better and better with the sealing. So we don't do that on our end, but I do see a lot of advertisements for that, where they'll clean them back up and seal them. Typically, when we go in and we have to match it, a paver that's been down for a while and it's got that color difference between the two of them, you could be using the same, like Phoenix paver is the most common one. So you could use a Phoenix paver, like the native color, and you'll put in one another one and it looks completely different. Year or year and a half, then it looks exactly the same. You never be able to tell where it was at. So
right.
We usually just warn customers up front, hey, it might look a little different, but it'll give it some time and it'll be fine. I'm not sure if you did the cleaning and the sealing, it would probably look like that right away, but I haven't seen many people that have had good luck with the sealing. Not saying that it isn't, I don't do it, but they could have just had a bad
I tried at our last house, I tried to do it myself and I clearly didn't do a great job. It kind of left it spotty. But I'm sure they're getting better at it. But like with anything, I mean, our Arizona sun kills everything, including sealant. I got a little bamboo fence around my pool equipment that I spray about 3 times a year with Thompson's, and it helps, but it doesn't last forever. The sun will kill everything.
Yes.
So obviously pavers are always going to be more cost effective, and I think they look great. So we did them in our side driveway too, and then decided to use them in the backyard as well. What do you see? I mean, do you see any benefit besides aesthetic and personal choice? Like, does travertine hold up better? Do pavers hold up better?
They both hold up really well. I've never done travertine on a driveway. I've done a lot of pavers on the driveway, and the process for that's a little different because you got to make sure what you're driving on doesn't sink on you. So we end up doing, actually, I've done several repairs now for driveways where they, someone's driven, they've got them done years ago and they drove it on and they just didn't do the initial process quite right. But travertine I think I would say they're both lifetime products. So they're both products that you wouldn't have to worry about again. So they are both good.
That's
for
good.
longevity.
And then what about, like, I remember this hasn't happened yet at this house, but at the last house with our pavers, eventually, like, kind of the sand, like the grout kind of thins out. Does that ever need to be like maintained? Is there any kind of long-term
so you can
with either one of these?
So there's really not a ton of maintenance here. The sand will blow out that comes out in between there. It just uses like a play sand in between it, or you can use polymeric sand, which is a little bit it stays on there a little bit better, but it will blow out over the years. That's a super simple process. You just basically dump a little pile there and use a broom and sweep it, and you'll be good again. But you're years and years and years before you have to do that, if you even notice that it's gone. So it's really long lasting good stuff. So the pavers we were having a shortage of pavers a while back now that the housing market's changed a little bit. That's actually helped that process. But at some points people would be like, yeah, I want this gray paver, and I'd be like, okay, well, we can install it in 7 months. That's when the product's supposed to be in. And look, versus if you choose one of these other colors, you get it in 2 weeks or something. Yeah. We bought that was always a little bit of a problem. Now they're pretty much around everywhere.
Yeah, we started building our pool in the summer of 2020. It took 9 months. And my landscape guy, old buddy of mine, he's like, if you really like these pavers, let's order them now. And they were sitting in my driveway for 3 months before we could put them in. But it's because he kept going
6 months before you got them.
Yeah. So we kept going to the Marvel store, whatever. Looking at stuff, and they're like, hey, we have them today if you want them. I don't know what I'll have next week, kind of thing. So have you seen that kind of change? Is it easier to get product now?
Yeah, much easier. The only disappointment right now that we're having to tell customers is a lot of the new manufacturers, when they were building their house, because pavers were such a craze, they're putting in driveways and stuff like that. So now when they want to do their little walkway back to the back gate with a little concrete, the little pad for their garbage cans.
Yeah.
They want to try to match the Belgard pavers that are in there, and it seems like Belgard has discontinued about 90% of what they used to produce. So finding the same pavers is really tough, and that gets rough, especially when it's in the front of a house. Yeah, trying to two things that are mated together and having two different materials, you can definitely tell. So that's been a little bit of an obstacle.
Well, I've been doing real estate for a long time. Anytime these new build communities come up, they slap them together and hope that nobody complains for a year or two when the builder's out of there. So, right. But that's where, having an expert like you that's got a ton of experience could come in and say, hey, if we're starting fresh in the back, it doesn't have to match the front, but we could make it work and come up with a design scheme that won't make it look clunky or funky or, mismatched.
Or get it. Yeah, and what we do in the front typically is we just try to get like the closest color. Maybe it's a different manufacturer, and the pavers might be a little bit of a different size. But then we'll just try to put, hey, let's put a solid gray in here, or charcoal gray, and like one strip of those in between it, and then you won't see it as much when it's the subtle differences.
Right.
Versus when they're mated together, then you can definitely see it. So we got some tricks of the trade to try to help with that too.
You guys got salt and pepper color to match you and Mike's beards?
I'm just happy that Beal still have a beard. My top of my head, it's not so lucky.
Yeah,
Our foreheads have changed 5, 6, 7 heads here, so I got some up there, but it's not as good as it used to be. So
I always say my cul-de-sacs are turning into a block party here. So
yeah. I hear that.
Well, Mike, do you have any other questions for Tom?
No, I don't. That was good stuff. Really informative stuff. And I should say, for the record, being from Houston, I remember when AstroTurf became a thing. So I feel like I always think of it as AstroTurf. But
that's why it's called AstroTurf, right?
Yeah.
Synthetic. What was it again?
I think it was called AstroTurf because the Astros were the first one to put it.
Oh no, yes, no. But I mean, what do we call it now? Just so I get it right.
Either artificial turf or synthetic grass. They're both the same thing.
Yeah, I don't want to use
I had that growing up. I had that same AstroTurf in my patio growing up as a kid, so I remember that stuff as well. So
I remember Nebraska was one of the first colleges to put it in.
Yeah,
and, that was my team, so I remember that stuff. Tom, we've got your info running on here, but what's the best way to, if somebody wants a quote or wants an estimate, is it go to your website or contact you direct?
So I have a website. Most people contact me via Facebook, and that's where I do a lot of my advertising. So Paradise Pavers and Landscaping on Facebook is my Facebook page, and then on every advertisement on Marketplace or Facebook, you'll see my phone number on there too, and I'll come give you a free estimate and let you know what it's going to cost to do things and help you out if you got a particular budget in mind and figure out, hey, what materials we should use for that budget so that we can try to keep you within means. So.
Got one for you. You service everywhere, one side of the valley? You have a preference?
I do service everywhere in the valley, especially with turf. I have 2 different crews. So my turf crews are generally like 1 day on jobs. Almost all of my turf jobs are usually 1 day, maybe a couple of day jobs. So that crew, I try to keep them busy with a job a day, but I'm a lot quicker on those. For my pavers and we do a lot of drip systems, and we don't use polyline on our drip systems. We use actual PVC. We like to try to make everything lifetime. So we use when we do that stuff, we're usually 3 to 5 days on a new build for those guys, and then we'll bring the grass guys in afterwards. It's but we do the entire valley, the East Valley. My one crew is we're based out of the far West Valley, out of Whitman. So we try to stick more west than east, but I do advertise and go everywhere, and especially with grass, my grass guys are kind of centrally set, so they'll go anywhere. We even been to Tucson and Flagstaff too, so we'll go about anywhere.
That's a big job.
Prescott Valley, all that stuff.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do all that too. So
there's a lot of new builds happening up there in Anthem and New River and everywhere in between. Another question on that, since we're still going, is there a better time of year to do this?
For us, we of course love it in the winter, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't. There's no change in price. It doesn't affect either way. Timeliness, you're going to be a lot better off in the winter. The summertime's our busiest. That's when I think people realize the most how much they hate mowing grass. So we're a lot more busy in the summer than we are in the winter.
Gotcha. Well, awesome, Tom. I think that was great stuff. Mike, I always appreciate that. At least you got a couple of comments and questions in today. Everybody knows that, I like to run my mouth a little, but Tom, this is awesome. I was glad I got to reconnect with you. And everybody check him out. I'm on Tom's Facebook page. I wish I would have known 2 years ago that he did this because I would have had him do my yard. But Tom, we'll get you connected with Jason and get you set up to do some stuff for HomeQwik.
Yeah.
So both of you stick around, but we'll end the podcast now, the Zoom cast, I think we're calling it. And thanks everybody for checking it out. See Tom's info, see Mike's info, see my info. If you're a BDM or a business owner or just got an expertise on something you want to talk about, hit up me or Mike. We'd love to have you on the Big Guys Biz Show, and we'll see you guys next time.